They were born 11 minutes apart, and that small measure of time threaded through everything that followed. Marcus came first, loud and stubborn, an insistence that the world take notice. Leo followed, quieter and colder, the kind of kid who watched people like a player studies a board, cataloging moves and waiting for openings. Those 11 minutes felt like a promise and a challenge at once, close enough to be bound, distant enough to be rivals. Their childhood was a continuous scoreboard. Who ran fastest? Who could lift more? Who could eat the most cereal without blinking? Their father watched, laughing, convinced that competition forged character and grit. He trained until his body moved on muscle memory and anger, until elbows and takedowns and kicks were extensions of an endless will to win. Leo took a different lane. He chose boxing, pared down to fist and footwork, to timing and precision. No kicks, no submissions, just geometry and rhythm in a ring. He became a heavyweight star, undefeated, minimal fuss, his face rarely breaking into sweat under the glare of the cameras. Reporters adored the contrast. Same bloodline, two different codes, two undefeated records that fed the narrative of a family duel. But what looks like storybook destiny is often a slow pressure, reshaping people without their full consent. The brothers became each other's shadow. Shadows move with you, but their darkness can grow into a storm if the light is wrong. The first real crack came the night after a Marcus fight. He went to Leo's training camp, the air thick with the smell of sweat and tape. Marcus still carried the residue of adrenaline, loud and insisted upon, like always. Leo had been sparring and seemed barely winded, a smoothness to his movement that annoyed as much as it impressed. Marcus registered a small, clinical assessment from Leo, something that should have been routine. A note on defense, a suggestion about leaving himself open. But Marcus's ears translated it differently. Then came a promoter with an idea that smelled like money and spectacle, a charity exhibition. MMA versus boxing. The cage would be modified, rules adjusted to make it safe. Headgear, bigger gloves, no kicks to the head, no submissions. Designed for show and appeasing regulatory concerns, it was advertised as a friendly clash between brothers, a ratings bonanza, an easy narrative. Leo hesitated. He could see the optics. People assuming hate, assuming drama. Marcus, always wanting to prove something, shrugged the concern away. Their mother, weathered by 1,000 family conventions, pleaded against it with a quiet conviction that this was more than another match. Pride, again, was louder. The contract was signed. Tickets vanished in 48 hours. When they entered the cage, the lights hit them like a judgment. Phones rose like a sea of small suns. This was no private meeting now, it was a public verdict. The bell started a rhythm that felt distant at first. Marcus, predictably, rushed forward with the wildness that had been his advantage in so many fights. Leo moved like shadowed water, conserving energy, seeking openings. A leg kick landed from Marcus, legal under the modified code. The crowd went wild. Theater worked. Leo replied with a single jab, disciplined, surgical. The jab snapped Marcus's head back, a small technicality that revealed a larger truth. In movement and patience, Leo held the upper hand. Marcus heard something shift in himself. It was not immediate pain but a sting to pride, a feeling of being outclassed on a stage where being outclassed felt like humiliation. As the rounds went on, the dance imploded into something less performative. Marcus tried to change the pattern. Wrestle, scramble, bring the fight into the messy zone where his instincts thrived. Leo countered cleanly with a right hand, not monstrous, not malevolent, just an effective shot timed with the clarity of someone who has practiced restraint. Marcus slipped and hit the canvas, scrambling to get up not because he was incapacitated but because pride demanded it. The ref stepped in. Leo raised hands the way a man works a rope to steady something. Between rounds the old scoreboard flickered, showing all the times a referee's glance had settled on Leo first, all the subtle preferences of coaches, of cameras, of an audience that prefers the composed to the combustible. When the bell rang again, Marcus exploded, not with strategy but with the thunder of someone trying to rewrite a life in a few hard seconds. He threw a punch that crossed the line of control, the kind of shot that, in the wrong moment, stops time. Leo reacted instinctively, a natural defense translated into a quick uppercut, not driven by hatred but by reflex. Marcus went down hard. An arena that had been loud fell into a heavy silence. The ref stopped the fight. Marcus's attempt to claw his way back was stopped by his own legs and the finality of the official call. He left the cage in a fury that made no sense to anyone watching because it was not directed at the match, it was a fury at a life's worth of comparison. Afterward there was no hospital drama, no media meltdown, only a slow unspooling of what should have been private. Leo answered questions in a way that suggested loss. He had won a contest and felt bereft in the space it opened. Marcus vanished into training rooms and later into wins that were always shadowed by an ache that victory couldn't fix. He refused interviews, ignored calls, skipped holidays. The tightness between them widened from a fissure into a canyon. They both kept fighting and winning in their respective sports, but the weight of the exhibition sitting between them was a constant, unignorable presence. The promotional narrative had sold a spectacle, and the fans had consumed a story where the brothers stood opposite each other as archetypes. But inside the frames, in the quiet places where family life lives, the real damage was subtler and more lasting. Pride is not an enemy in itself. It is the rhetoric we give our insecurities, and left unchecked it becomes a force that divorces people slowly, under the pretense of strength. The brothers' careers thrummed on conventional triumphs, belts, endorsements, highlight reels. But the life that once contained shared jokes and holiday tables dwindled into a pattern of polite avoidance and unspoken grievances. Years rolled forward. The scene that finally drew them back under the same roof was not a headline or a rematch, it was a funeral. Their mother, the quiet center that had tried to keep things whole, was gone. The church was full of memories and furniture and music that felt too loud for such restrained hearts. They stood at opposite ends of the pews, not in the gladiatorial positions that had defined them in headlines but as two men carrying a weight they both understood. Their eyes met once. The look they exchanged was not hot with anger, it was cooled into something heavier, the kind of sorrow that sits in the chest long after tears have dried. There were no dramatic reconciliations, no cathartic speeches. There was only distance, a deliberate space maintained because the damage had become a defining practice. So many words had been swallowed in moments when pride seemed the only language, so many apologies held back because admitting fault felt like dissolving identity. They exchanged a nod that was polite and formal, and then they turned away, back to the ritual of grief and memory and a life that seemed to continue without them as co-conspirators. When people look back at their story, they often talk about broken bones or a heavyweight knockout, about sparks and spectacle. But the true fracture was quieter and more human. Two undefeated competitors had not lost titles or unbeaten records, they had lost one another. The rivalry that once sharpened them became a wedge that kept them separate. It was not that they stopped loving each other, they simply stopped speaking the kind of language that would let love survive competition. In a sport, you accept loss and step back into the gym. In life, a loss against someone you grew up with can rewire everything: holidays, visits, the carving of a roast. It rewrites memory by omission. There was no moral parade at the end, no tidy lesson scrawled across a banner. The truth of their story was messier, an elliptical caution about how ambition and pride, when left unchecked, can corrode the foundations that supported them. The crowd wants clean narratives. The bad brother gets his comeuppance, the good brother learns humility. Real life skips those neat beats. What remains is a quieter grief. The recognition that some rivalries do not simply bruise egos. They erode family bonds in ways that don't show up on scorecards. If the story serves any purpose, it is not to punish ambition or to criminalize competition. Instead, it is a reminder that what you fight for matters, and how you fight shapes the people left standing beside you. Marcus and Leo became champions by many definitions. They trained, they sacrificed, they achieved. But the championship that matters in the small scale of day-to-day life, the championship of staying close when the lights dim and the performances stop, is fragile. It needs tending, as do all relationships that matter. Their last shared scene, in a church with a slow hymn trailing into the rafters, was a tableau of what too many allow to happen. Two lives running parallel, never quite converging, their triumphs silently tallied against a ledger that counted absence as its final line. There was no applause. There was no handshake. Only a quiet distance and the private knowledge that some things, once broken, don't heal in the way you wish. Rivalries can make you stronger, as their father said, but they can also hollow what they helped build if you let them stand between you for too long. This is not a call to stop competing. It is a call to notice what competition does to your circles, to name when winning becomes losing something else. Marcus and Leo will be remembered for their records, their styles, and the spectacle they provided to the world. But the ache that lived in their silence, that quiet absence of shared jokes and family dinners, is the truer, quieter legacy. In the end, the real championship might be learning how to win and still hold the people you love. Too often, people discover that lesson only after the lights have gone down and the crowd has long since left.